Welcome to Cornerstone's Pastors Podcast. This is Pastor Scott, and with me today are Pastors Brian.
Yep.
And Pastor Matt.
All right. That's going to be...
That's what that was. So, it's been a few weeks since the three of us were in the same room.
Woo! Were you just itching to say hi?
I thought he was going to do me first.
So it was an honest mistake.
I thought he was going to do...
It was an honest mistake.
It was loosely honest. Which is, to be fair, it's my favorite kind of honest. It's loosely honest.
Today's podcast is on loose honesty.
Yeah.
How honest do you have to be able to say, I told the truth?
Exactly.
With Pastor Matt Kleinhans.
Loopholes with Pastor Matt.
That's right. So... Well, we're actually going
we're not condoning that. That's bad, okay?
Fair enough.
Just to clarify it.
I
know that we're going to get a bunch of emails about that.
Do we get
we
emails?
We don't get any emails.
Yeah. I get all the emails after our podcast. Everyone emails me.
Shocker.
Podcast at cornerstone.org. What are we talking about today,
That's
Scotty?
not a real email address, by the way.
No, it's not.
Just
we gotta
last anyone that wants to send an email.
It was mostly the truth.
All right. What we're actually going to attempt to talk about today is just the topic of regathering physically, right? Of regathering physically interpersonally in community groups. You know, is that important? How should we think about it? How should we navigate this? How should we navigate the differing levels of physical risk involved? How should we navigate the differing levels of conscience? And as people kind of navigate this season going forward, and regathering corporately, which is also, I think, something that people have a lot of questions about. We actually hopefully have an update email going out this week. But if you're listening to the podcast, like the first day, you might get more information. You might get like this is the way to get the insider information for
like
24
right now,
hours.
this podcast?
Right now, this podcast.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant a previous one.
Right.
If you listen to this, you could have information before you get the email.
You might. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You be on the inside.
That's right. Because we are planning to begin regathering corporately next month, August 9th. That's a date.
Boom.
That's a date. It's the first time we've had a date.
That's true.
In a lot of months. So August 9th, there's a lot of different factors that go into that. We're developing the protocols for that. A major piece of that is obviously the sanctuary construction. Everything looks to be on track. There's the word. Super complicated one. So that we can begin to have services with people physically gathered beginning August 9th. The question is, though, like, what does that look like? Like, what does that mean, right? We're not going back to where we were March 8th on August 9th. So I don't know. Maybe we can kind of take a little bit of a stab at.
That's only a month away.
It's only a month away. Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting.
I'm pretty kind of exciting. Brian's excited.
I'm excited.
He looks excited.
I'm excited.
You guys can't tell.
I don't know how to prove it. I don't know what to do.
I'll describe it for everyone at home. There's rays of sunlight coming out of his eyes.
There's numerous ways to demonstrate excitement. You don't know any of them?
I
wasn't sure what would pass the threshold.
He stepped away from the mic to do a happy dance. It's really, really spectacular.
So, all right. So what's August 9th going to look like?
So August 9th, what we're doing is we're starting essentially inviting people in to be present kind of for the live stream is the way we've talked about it, because we want to be careful in the way we phase things. Mm-hmm. And so we'll invite a certain amount of people to come in, and it will involve masks that are worn the entire time. Mm-hmm. We will have like areas to sit for people. They're designated that are 6 feet apart or more from each other, from households, and from individuals in certain cases. And other than that, it's going to be the service itself, like the stuff that I tend to focus on for my role at the church, is going to be relatively similar. We're going to have a prelude song. We're going to have a sermon. We're going to have prayers.
How many points will the sermon have, Brian?
I'm letting that thing happen where it gets funny when you wait.
No, it does. You just have to pause for everyone on the podcast listening, laughing. Let them get it out. It's still going.
So there are other things that we're going to do for
the service will be normal. The sermons will have the average number of points.
3 points, yeah.
And your temperature will get checked on the way in.
Yep.
Right. We'll have all the visuals.
There's registration.
I was going to say, you will have to register ahead of time. And so we're going to try to register people in their community groups so that you are able to worship together with your community group if you want to come back at this point.
And to clarify, there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And it's not just another hurdle. The reality of the situation is registration is helpful because it allows us to know how many people are going to be there. We have a pretty strict limit on how many people can be there. And if anything did ever happen, we would know who's there with each service to be able to trace things. So it's very important, the registering part of things. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, for those of you out there listening, it doesn't feel cumbersome. A lot of the rules and regulations maybe in the world and in the church that we're going to be putting into place, for some of you, maybe feels cumbersome, but there's health safety reasons why we're doing it, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. So you'll get more information about that. I'm sure you have questions. You'll get more information about that hopefully in email, Lord willing, in email form this week, depending on what this week holds. I don't make any promises anymore, but that's the plan. You're gonna get an email this week.
Well, what if this is like outdated by the time?
This is what I'm saying. It totally happens.
Yeah.
And then in another week or two, you will get a detailed protocol with all the details of exactly what is going to be required of you, and we're just finalizing that as well. But we made this decision. I mean, this is a perfect example. We made this decision on Tuesday. Affirmed it with the
after a significant amount of time, just lest people think we got together on Tuesday and made a quick decision.
No, exactly. We've been working on this for
a month and a half of preparation.
Got to finalization, on Tuesday.
We finally were like, okay,
here's the date.
Construction, the live stream teams,
multiple
everything
languages,
else, all the different languages, like everything can work so that we're gonna shoot for a date. We decided on Tuesday, affirmed it with the elders on Wednesday. On Thursday, I wrote an initial draft of this update email. And then, was it Thursday night?
I think it was Wednesday night. I think it was actually Thursday morning.
Maybe I didn't even see it until Thursday night.
We did not run our protocols by the governor.
Governor Newsom releases new requirements that say that that churches can't sing for the time being. That you can gather up to 25% of your building capacity, but you're not allowed to sing.
It's almost everything that we had planned. Like nothing else really changed that much. It was just kind of that one little item in the midst of that long document.
I thought it said you had to have 2 points in your sermon too. Did it not say that?
Newsom did not weigh on.
He did not weigh in on that.
Oh,
okay.
Yet, but
guys, Brian's laughing, but he's just away from the mic. You can't tell.
So, we haven't even talked about this, and I said that we should just have this conversation recorded.
This is risky.
It is risky.
I mean, to be fair, the whole podcast up to this point has been a little risky.
We need to pause just so that I can edit this out if need be. So here's the pause, and then we'll say, don't worry. Actually, that conversation wasn't worth anything, and then But in case it is worth anything,
right.
Yep.
What does this change? Does it change anything?
Man. I mean, I don't. The idea of bringing people in and then getting rid of all the music such that even the live stream has no singing feels like losing, not gaining.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea of saying, hey, let's wait an extra month and keep singing, kind of virtually together instead of not being able to sing at all, for the sake of having a few of us be in the room together doesn't feel like a win to me. It feels kind of demoralizing in some ways. And we had in this discussion, that was our bar. Remember,
yeah.
Like it's
4
not
weeks
a service
ago or 6 weeks ago. If we
yeah.
can't sing at all in any way, I mean, we talk about like a humming and singing quietly and finding ways if there was some efficacy to that or some way that's actually kind of a loving your neighbor health wise kind of thing. Let's see if we can do that. But the idea of just a blanket ban at the same time, the fact that this keeps changing in ways that feel like the timing there wasn't a heads up, hey, we're going to make some changes, in a couple of weeks, or we're going to reevaluate here. So there's a shot that goes away before we even do it.
This is my hope. Like a lot of the, restaurants and stuff like that, they basically said, we're going to change everything for 3 weeks and see what happens. We're not planning on gathering together until August 9th. So there's a part of me that's
4
optimistic.
weeks, 5 weeks.
Yeah. There's a part of me that's hopeful that this shifts, before then, and it's kind of a moot point, and that's why we don't necessarily have to, but is there a point where we say, like, this is important enough, and like, I know that the governor doesn't want us to sing, but we need to be gathered singing?
What do you think, Loose Truth?
I don't know, guys. I'm having a hard time with this one. I think there's been definitely some indication in the past that singing can be a significant vector. Get it? I haven't heard of any indication of it being a significant vector with masks on and with the new protocols.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's not like it would be different if there was, we reopened churches and we haven't been meeting in person, but some churches in California have, because they have capacity, they have these rules. And then like there's 40 cases of huge super spreader events because of people singing at 6 feet apart with masks on. So I don't know. It feels a little bit arbitrary to me, if I'm going to be honest. It feels like an extra layer of difficulty. And for me, it doesn't seem like a real church service if people can't sing.
Yeah.
So, and like, one of you said something about humming. Is that against the rules? Is like really quiet singing again? Is this an enforceable rule? Is there going to be any way that this is enforceable? Does that mean it? I don't know. Okay, this is me. This is my raw thoughts right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I feel like a little discouraged. If I'm honest, I feel discouraged.
I think we all feel
more than a little. I feel a lot of
because it does feel like there's a bit of a rug pulled out from under you feeling, and some of that is kind of raw because it's really recent, and we did spend a lot of time trying to get it together, and so for whatever reason, getting the three of us right now talking about it for the first time, there's going to be a sense of like, oh gosh, like, man, we felt like we finally had kind of something that felt safe and it felt kind of obedient, and it felt like we were kind of threading the needle of all the different things we want to be able to do. And it's like, oh no, now we can't, without a ton of explanation as to why. And so I think we're going to feel that way. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, that doesn't have to be the whole point of this podcast, right? We're not going to figure that out now. I think we've got some time to see how that develops over the coming weeks. I think it does demonstrate the fact that even though we've said the words August 9th, this is obviously a very fluid situation that we're continuing to try to figure out with wisdom, honoring who God calls us to honor.
Pray for us, please.
Yeah, pursuing God with how He's being obedient, how He's called us to be obedient, and we do. We just desperately need prayer for wisdom in the midst of this, and so there'll be a lot of conversations about that.
Well, and I think just for people like listening, practically, what we're almost certainly going to do is keep the same plan and move forward and just be ready to go. And then if we end up making a decision to delay, we delay, but not like we're not sitting around right now reevaluating everything we've just done, just in case anyone's confused. Like, no, like we're going to keep this going, and we'll kind of have to see a few weeks out, maybe. It's hard to know how to move forward. But we're still assuming this is a plan that is doable and workable and safe and good, assuming that we can do that. Totally.
Absolutely. So, okay. So given that, let's assume that, right? Let's assume that August 9th actually does come, that, this kind of blip goes away. This blip about singing goes away. What about those that still, though, aren't comfortable, right? What about those that are like, wait, August 9th? Like, I don't know. Like, there's still lots of stuff out there, either just for my personal health, for like the spread. Like, what about people that aren't comfortable coming and gathering, or maybe even just shouldn't? Like, it's unwise for them to be around a group of people that size. Like, are we, when we say like we're regathering again, are we saying like this is what we're doing as a family, so you need to be there? Or are we, what would you say to people that maybe aren't ready don't feel ready, shouldn't feel like they shouldn't gather come August 9th?
I mean, I think that you should be okay not coming. Like that's part of. We said this before. I think in one of the previous podcasts, but the idea here is to create a way that is safe for people who both feel comfortable and are, in wisdom. It's a good idea to attend. Mm-hmm. There are people in our church who fit that bill. There are others, who don't. There are certain people who are in more risky demographics that might not feel comfortable. There are people who just, frankly, by conscience or just out of not knowing, feeling confused about what's going on and what's safe and what's not, might want to kind of err on the safe side in that way.
An abundance of caution.
Yeah. And we are absolutely fine with that. And that's what, in fact, we kind of encourage that. We encourage, we're not looking to make you do something that makes you feel uncomfortable somehow, for us, as though that's like a win somehow. It's not. And so that's why we've tried to phrase this and think about this as the first phase is inviting people into the live stream. The main thing we're doing is still the live stream, but we are slowly, kind of broaching the idea of being able to bring people back in safely. And so we're assuming that if you feel uncomfortable, that you should stay home and you should continue to worship with us kind of virtually for now. And that over time, as things change and as you talk to your community group and as you talk to us as your pastors, and just as we do this together as a community, help each other navigate all of this, that, one day things will be in a place where you do feel comfortable for whatever reason.
Yeah. It makes me think of the fact that we didn't mention, and it's maybe one of those other kind of key bullet points, there won't be childcare. Right. There won't be any children's Sunday school because we can't, at least on August 9th, there won't be because that's not something that we can.
In person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in person. So they'll continue to be our virtual Sunday school and things like that. But I think that'll affect a lot of people's ability to come and gather in person as well.
The rules as they are state you have to be staying in your own household if you're going to be meeting in person.
Exactly. So what about in the meantime, though? What about, what about the month of July? What about going forward? So this is what we're doing kind of corporately church-wide, but what about community groups? What about individuals getting together? We've talked a little bit about this, but I think it might be good to just kind of reiterate some of our thoughts, encouragements.
Yeah,
in regards to
that. We've sent out kind of community group meeting protocols for using the on-campus spaces that we have available, and some of the groups have taken advantage of that and met up in person on campus here using our green space or using some of the courtyard or some of the open areas that we have. I think it's good to be cautious, and I understand that. I think it's really important to see people in person, and I don't say that without. I don't say that with a bunch of caveats or qualifications, because I think it's just true that it's important to see people in person. And I believe also from the things that experts have said that there's ways to do that safely. So for community groups, the guidelines we gave for using on campus, but also I think guidelines in general for our community group leaders are that if there are ways to facilitate that for a small segment of your group, for example, maybe just a lot more men's nights or ladies' nights, and women nights separated out, it could be a good opportunity for that. Obviously, again, there's still the kid factor for those of the groups that do have children, and it's hard to socially distance with younger kids, especially, and so that's another reason why maybe a men's night or a women's night makes a lot of sense. Something that can be done outside in a safe place. Some groups have met in parks, sat socially distanced in parks, and just talked and hung out, and you don't share food and you don't hug each other, and so you miss certain things. But it's good to see people in person, pray together in person, talk about God together in person. I think it's also something to be considered that a lot of our groups also have people who maybe aren't comfortable with that yet, and if that's you, that's also okay. And I don't think the groups should exclusively be meeting in person. I think there still needs to be on, Zoom, Google Meet, whatever. Shout out to Chris Morris, Google Meet, meetings on virtual meetings for the group so that everyone can participate. So I think there's ways that you can do that well and still provide avenues for interpersonal, in-person, physical connection.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I just second that. I think it's really important, and I think the longer this all goes, it's increasingly important. Like I don't think it's just as important as it was in April. I think the longer this goes, like actually the more important.
It's important for the same reasons. It's just the context makes it much more important for us. I mean, and we understand, some people listening to this, you might be experiencing significant loneliness in this season, and we understand that. We're praying for you, and it's difficult. So these are suggestions that are rooted in a desire to see our church community thrive.
And hopefully you're thinking through some of these things, not just through the lens of like kind of yourself. One of the things that happens in this kind of environment, as weird as it is you kind of, and part of that's wisdom, is like going, okay, what's safe for me? Like where is my comfort level? We're using that terminology a lot. And even like, it's important for you to be around other people. And that's all true. And I've signed off on it 100%. I also think that there's a layer there that you want to add that says like, it's also important for other people to see you. Yeah. And like, it's also important to fight. This is a bit of an aside to the question itself, but there's a disposition that can be formed in a time like this. It's really self-focused, and to fight that as much as you can. We've talked about that several times, but in these kind of, not just in the decisions, like that's a little nebulous and thorny. It's like, well, I'm going to go see other people, even though I'm uncomfortable, because that's not what I'm saying. But the idea that you're trying not to exclusively think about how all these things are going to affect you and your own preferences and your own desires, but also factor into your decision making and just the way you're looking at the world right now, as there's other people in the world too, and what do they need and where are they at? And that's kind of a spiritual discipline right now that kind of also, because of context, I think rises higher in the priority list, because it's so hard. Everything around us is telling us not to do that right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a really important point, Brian, because one of the hardest things for me about this like stay-at-home season is the way I could love people in this at that time was to stay home.
Yeah.
And I think in general, there's still some truth to that. I think we're coming into a season where the most loving thing may be to figure out how can I love and serve this person. And that might include in-person meetings and praying together, seeing each other, talking, catching up, loving and caring for people. I think that's really powerful, a powerful thought. And it's like a mind shift coming out of a quarantine season where the opposite was true.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're asked to do is it's really tempting to make it about us. Like, should I do this or should I not? Because like it's best for me or not best for me, right? I mean, this is the whole argument with masks, right? Like people are like, oh, I need to wear a mask because I'm like scared of like everybody around me. You're like, well, no, like the whole logic is like I wear a mask for other people, right? Wear a mask so I don't spread this to like other people. And I think that there's a way that even particularly as Christians, we ought to be owning this other focused mindset. Like we ought to be the greatest proponents screaming from the rooftop. It's not about me. It's about how I can serve others in everything we're doing in the midst of and all the choices we're making.
I will say the morality of that is complicated, right? In this time where there's
for
a lot,
sure,
like what the line, drawing that line directly from one thing to another thing can be complicated and tricky because for a variety of reasons. But I just letting everyone know that we understand the complexities, and as you're working through this, praying through it and asking God to guide you in how you love other people, we're with you and praying along with you.
Totally.
So this is Scott actually breaking into the recording at this point. I hope you don't mind the intrusion. But at this point, our conversation took a really interesting and I think really important turn to begin discussing the ways that this season has brought about unique temptations to division in the church and why we need to be particularly on guard about divisiveness while we are physically separated from one another. In fact, I think the conversation was so important that I wanted to post it as its own unique episode. So I split the episode into two separate parts, and we'll be airing the second half of this conversation later this week. I hope you'll enjoy it and be as edified by it as I was. We'll talk to you then.